Hello guys, today I want to quickly showcase a testing method that you've probably never heard before. It's called table testing. I don't want to give you a boring textbook definition, so let me first explain the problem it solves. Do you remember times when you had to copy and paste the same unit size multiple times, slightly changing a few values just to trigger a certain flow or maybe an error? This has happened to many of us, and it's honestly pretty annoying. Now imagine if you could write the test logic only once, and then simply add test case values that get executed automatically, without writing any loops. Sounds cool, I know. That's exactly the purpose of table testing. It allows you to create test scenarios for a specific flow and very different inputs and outputs, without repeating the same codes over and over again. Let's take a look at an example. Here we can see that for each execution, we initialize values and check the expected result. I know what you might be thinking, why not just write a fast test and generate thousands of such scenarios? And you'd be right, sometimes that works. However, there are cases where we want to test very specific scenarios, where values are aligned in a particular way. These are often hard to hit with fuzzing, and invariance tests can be overkill for such small scenarios. That's where table testing shines. Imagine we have a dataset with predefined cases that we want to test. First, we define a struct with input values and the expected outputs. Then, we create a special function with a fixture keyword in its name that returns all of our test cases. Next, we add the test case themselves. Then we create a test function with a table keyword at the beginning to mark it as a table test. Finally, we write the test logic. You can imagine that each test case is passed one by one and checked against the acquire assertion. One important note: when you create a fixture dataset, it should follow a specific naming pattern. First comes the fixture keywords, then the dataset name. When you use this dataset as a parameter in a table test function, the parameter name should match the dataset name but without the fixture keywords. For example, if we have fixture sums, then the argument name in table sum test should be sums. I know this example is very simple and somewhat artificial, so let's take a look at something more realistic. Let's write a table test to check the health of a position in a lending protocol. For example, we might have the following data. Now, let's write the test. As before, we start with a struct. Then, we initialize our fixture variable. By the way, this can be either a variable or a function, so don't be confused by that. Then we create the test cases in a setup function. Next, we define a special table test function. Finally, we write the condition that checks the health of the position. I hope you've learned something new today. You can read more about this method in the Foundry documentation. Have a nice day, and good luck writing the best test suite humanity has ever seen.